Hi, I'm Captain Stephen Fields, Navionics Marine Specialist. I appreciate you attending the webinar targeting redfish and trout in fall and early winter today. Great time of year to target redfish and trout, inshore and both near shore this time of the year, especially in my area. I'm located out of Charleston, South Carolina. So let's get into it. Redfish and trout, what, where, when, and how. I mean, it's pretty as simple as that, especially with the tidal flow we have. That's going to be a lot of the wind to target them. We'll go over how, of course, at the end with baits, terminal tackle and such, what to use, where to find them. This webinar is probably going to be more geared for my area, which is Charleston, South Carolina, especially down through St. Augustine, Florida, that type of area. But a lot of these things we talk about today, especially including the tactics and structure and what we're using as far as bait and terminal tackle, can be used just about anywhere in the Southeast for both of these species. All right, covering water. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that. Me personally, I like to do what most people would think isn't something you want to go into, and that would be eliminating water. You can eliminate a lot of bad water and save a lot of time leading into finding good water. So, eliminating water, again, saves a lot of time. I like to use my marine electronics or even my Navionics boating app while I'm off the water to be able to cover areas, going over what I'm looking for, using past knowledge of what works in my area. I'm sure everybody has that one spot that just always works for them. They've got the tides down, what the water clarity needs to be like, the current movement. So you can take a lot of that knowledge from a spot like that and use it when looking for other types of those areas, on whether it be your Navionics boating app or your marine electronics with your Navionics card in it. A big thing in my area is definitely targeting the creeks and flats. That's definitely no different anywhere in the Southeast. When targeting the creeks, you're definitely going to be tied into the flats as well. There's a lot of opportunities for, some deeper water creeks and such that aren't tied into flats, and we'll go over that later. But when targeting the creeks and flats, I'm looking at weather patterns for sure, especially in the fall and winter. Those pre-front bites are usually fantastic. The post-front bites after a cool front can be equally as good. We just had one here. So, we went out for a little post-front bite yesterday. The fishing was just as good. The fish probably moved around a little bit, so we had to cover some more water, again, using a lot of the information from the previous spots that were paying off in the day and such. And, it was great. You can't beat it. So definitely look for those weather patterns in your area this time of the year, those pre and post fronts. Watercolor and clarity as well has a lot to do with it. The water was stirred up a little bit yesterday, and that was closer to the main river. So a lot of silt, mud, sand getting washed down river on an outgoing or incoming tide, is going to dirty the water up. The current movement was a little bit faster yesterday. So using that knowledge, we went up into kind of a primary creek and started targeting secondary creeks, primary and secondary points in those creeks, small flats up in there, and where the current movement's a little bit slower. And due to that, the water clarity was a lot better. So, like I said, we just did it yesterday. So, I'm giving y'all some fresh knowledge here. Bait, plenty of bait around in the Southeast right now. A lot of the shrimp and stuff are starting to move out, of course, at your main choke points, toward the harbors and the bays and such. A lot of bait fish in the back right now, tons of mullet, tons of pogies, menhaden, whatever you want to call them, especially like the little potato chip size pogies loaded everywhere. So, definitely primarily using artificial hard baits or paddle tails, mimicking bait fish right now. Plenty of structure in our area as far as oyster bars goes, lots of docks, points, humps, holes. Those are all types of structure as well. Again, that's nowhere different in the Southeast. It's all the same. And you can see on this kind of bottom picture right here, and the top left picture, there's a nice dock there with an oyster point coming out. That is one of my spots. Hopefully I didn't give it away, but it's a really good picture of a situation that fishes real well. This is kind of the ultimate spot for me on what I'm looking for. It's got everything. You got a flat. This whole thing right here is a flat. Even where those docks are, very shallow water. Where the dock you see in the picture and the oyster bar, they always hold water at all tides, which is another important thing. Go over that when I talk about docks a little later in the presentation. Again, you got the oyster bar blocking current flowing in and out. You got the dock. It's gonna, slow the current down a little bit on this flat right here. There's good contours on either side of this oyster. And this picture right here is the same thing that's in that bottom right picture. You can kind of see the docks in the bottom right hand corner right there, and you can see which dock sticks out and has water even at the lowest tide. Anything in green, that's going to be negative, low water pretty much at low tide on a pretty consistent basis. And anything with the contour lines, of course, is going to hold water at low tide. So you can eliminate a lot of water and find a lot of spots by looking on your charts and seeing which docks and which flats are going to hold water at low tide. Gives the fish a sense of safety, of course, especially this time of the year with dolphins going to be starting to target redfish in our areas, and they're going to get a little on the edgy side. Now, when it comes to dissecting the flats and creeks of especially when it comes to in-water structure like oysters, shallow water areas, little feeder creeks, I definitely like to use satellite imagery overlay. It's nothing new on the inshore side and saltwater. The imagery has gotten extremely better, as you can see, way different than when I started this quite a while ago. And it's just cheating. It's video game fishing, just like the bass guys use their charts, and especially their 1 foot sonar charts and those tight contour lines. Satellite imagery is definitely our video game, gives us an edge. And you can see in this picture right here, right below the crosshairs in the middle of that satellite imagery, right below that, there's a little oyster bar sitting off the bank. Another great spot. And that's just something you can find by using this satellite imagery. Again, really easy to do, whether it be on the satellite imagery on your Navionics boating app or what's on your Platinum Plus Navionics card. And again, just being able to use satellite imagery, you're getting a bird's eye view of what you're going into, especially in my area with oysters. Those are great fish habitat, but it's also great to use it to avoid such hazardous structure when you're running these areas in your boat as well, or kayak. So, you got a lot of these little feeder creeks in here feeding off these, the main river points. You got this little secondary creek running up in that island right there. A lot of little flats back in there. Just finding any differences using satellite imagery like this is going to be key. On that lower left-hand corner of the island in the satellite imagery, you got a lot of small secondary points coming off that point. Again, that's something different. That's going to, attract fish as well. They love, especially in current, for bait to be brought to them. It's kind of like us sitting in our lazy boy and somebody bringing us a bag of Doritos. It's nice. We ain't got to go get up and go get the bag of Doritos. They come to us. So it's kind of the same thing that these reds and trout are looking at on these flats as well. Now, right now, we'll start with trout, especially in the flats and creeks. Again, clean water, nothing too fast as far as the current goes. They like a nice, light current. So if you got a day where the wind's cranking out of the north and, you got some good creeks to fish, and that north wind is going to help accelerate that tidal flow out of those creeks, those spots might be a little difficult to fish that day because it's going to increase the speed of that tide going out. So definitely try to find some spots where that current's going to be, just the right speed. It can also be too slow on calm days. Find some areas where the current's moving just that right speed. I'm sure we've all seen really fast current and really slow current. So we know that what that in between is and which we need to be looking for. And a lot of these spots in here, you can see plenty of little feeder creeks coming out of out of the marsh grass onto the flats or out into the main creek. You know, you got plenty of options to look for that right spot with the outgoing or incoming tide, especially with the trout. Mid to high incoming tide's a great tide to hit the flats and the creeks up in the marsh. You know, you're going to have water. You're not worrying about getting stranded or stuck on anything. Get a lot of confidence from that. And also high outgoing water. I'd say high outgoing through mid is another great time to target these feeder creeks dumping out. And that's definitely what's been paying off lately for us around some of these little cold fronts coming through with the trout. Of course, again, using hard baits, paddle tails, stuff like that. It's really been a great bite with them. Hadn't really even had to bring the popping cork out yet. The water's just clearing up nicely. So they're loving those bait imitations and being able to work for them. Now, as far as reds go, they're starting to school up. There's no doubt. We all look forward to Red October. That's kind of when it all starts. And now that we're into November, we're in the full swing of things. Definitely seeing little wolf packs and even bigger schools of reds forming up on the flats. This time of the year, I like to look for a muddier bottom instead of these main sandy flats off main rivers and stuff like that. So I want to get up into some of these bigger feeder creeks or even secondary creeks off these feeder creeks into some marsh. Definitely looking for a lot of marsh that might have washed away from past storms or just erosion of the marsh. And that's going to be usually a nice muddy bottom, creating a little muddy flat up in some of these secondary and even primary bigger creeks off your main bodies of water. And they're going to be up in there off to the sides and in little pockets and ponds. Definitely, you know, high water, I want to be in there, you know, mid to high incoming water and high outgoing water. Just for, you know, safety purposes, we have about a 6-foot tidal range in my area. So, and it's about the same all the way through Jacksonville and down towards St. Augustine. You get a little bit less of a tide height. And again, just those hard, muddy bottoms are going to warm up a lot better this time of the year in the sun when that water temperature starts ducking down. And those fish are just going to be geared, you know, to that warmer water to sun themselves. Now, not to say, you know, some brighter color bottom, like let's say an old oyster rake, you know, those lighter colored dead oysters or even live oysters. Those all hold heat this time of the year, especially in that cleaner water and the sun heating it up. Those fish are going to love to hit those spots, and gives them a sense of safety. It's the right temperature for them. You know, perfect scenario for finding little reds. Everywhere I went yesterday looking for, you know, muddy bottom, like muddy flats where some marsh has eroded away and such. Found schools of fish. Covered a lot of new area yesterday, actually. I mean, I fished here most of my life, and there's still areas I haven't covered. So always learning, always searching. And yesterday that definitely paid off. Did more looking than I did catching, just because, you know, sometimes it's just good to go out and look at them, see how they're acting, how they're moving onto those flats, what creek they're using to get off those flats. And okay, the screenshot to the right of that satellite imagery, before I forget, this is an instance of a deeper creek coming in off of a main body of water. And in this deeper creek, we're not really looking for little secondary or primary creeks. We're actually looking for a different type of structure, and that's a hole. And this hole that you can see in the bend right there of the creek, I mean, there's plenty of differences there. It's in a bend of a major feeder creek, and there's also a hole there, and there's a hump right off the bank from that hole. So I mean, it's a trifecta of what you're looking for in a big feeder creek like this. And the trout absolutely love these holes when it comes to incoming or outgoing tide. Main thing for that is that hole creates the same sort of break in that current movement, giving you a little bit of an eddy as a dock or an oyster bar would. Speaking of docks, we'll get into a little bit of dock action here. And this is not that you can't catch trout off docks. I've caught plenty of trout, but this is my bread and butter when it comes to especially running charters or such in the fall and early winter in my area. It's going to hold fish. There's no doubt. You do your research and find the right docks. 1 out of 5 is going to hold fish. Again, starting looking at docks, holding water at all times. You can see in the bottom picture what docks are going to be holding water at all times. The bottom 2 docks are going to hold water at low tide, while the top 2 docks are not going to have water at low tide. So I'm going to focus more on those bottom 2 docks. And, you know, again, looking for differences, find some docks with maybe feeder creeks coming out beside them, with oyster bars under them, as you can see in that one right there. You find enough of those type of docks, and again, you hit enough of them, I'd say 1 out of 5 is going to hold good fish. And this screenshot right here is kind of just how I set up in different situations. I have the top left circled, so you can see the tides coming from left to right. You know, whether that be a low to mid incoming or a mid to low outgoing tide, which is what I would target these docks on. The fish are tight to the dock, as you can see with the small red dots I used to be the redfish. This type of situation, this current's going to be kind of cranking today, so the tide's going to be faster, current cranking. The fish are definitely going to hold tighter to these docks. So I'm going to set up on the upward side of the tidal movement and drift my baits into the structure around the pilings and such. Just because, you know, you got to get down and dirty and nice and tight when the fish are holding like that. The right dock, this is going to be like a normal tide movement. The fish, they could be anywhere. They actually could be tight to the dock. They could be off of the dock on the down current side. They're able to freely move around as a group of fish. So I'm going to set up on the down current side of that. That way I can effectively fish without getting right on top of them and spooking them, because it is going to be, you know, like I said, a low to a mid tide when I'm targeting these docks. And, you know, I can effectively fish the area. I can skip up under the dock, get close to those pilings, and I can also fish out from the dock, like just fishing on a flat and doing a lot of sight fishing. I wanted to throw jetties in there a little bit this time of the year, fishing jetties, jetty rocks. All of our major cities are going to have jetty rocks at the entrances of their main harbors and bays. Jetties are an awesome opportunity this time of the year to actually get those bigger redfish and the bigger trout. And, you know, it's definitely worth putting in the time if you got a nice condition day to be able to get out to your jetty system and on the right tides as well. In our area, there really is no wrong tide, other than I don't like fishing at dead low, which would be kind of a good sheep's head tide or a dead high tide. But other than that, as long as there's some good moving water and I can effectively get my bait down and fish all the parts of the water column, you know, it's a nice weather day, I'm definitely going to be out there and targeting redfish and trout, basically using the same setups as you do inshore. You can use live bait on a Carolina rig, of course, and popping corks with live bait. I usually go with artificial on a popping cork, especially this time of the year. The fish really target or really feed on the artificial baits I'm throwing just as well, if not more, than live bait. And for trout around the rocks, you know, definitely look for wash throughs, like you can see where that white sea foam's coming through. That's a good wash through spot where there might be a dip in the rocks at the jetty right there. You can use your depth finder, your fish finder, side scan, down scan to find maybe rocks that have come off the jetty over time that have gotten washed off and they've created a pile just off the jetty. Those are great targets to deep jig. But you know, you can't go wrong with the jerk baits, rattle traps, crank baits along the edge of the rocks covering different parts of the water column. Switching up depths on your leader material on your popping cork as well. Floating it in and out along the rocks for trout, all great tactics to use for big redfish and big trout this time of the year. Equipment, you know, I consider myself an inshore bass fisherman. I'm a light tackle guy, so I'm going, you know, 3,000 to 4,000 spinning reel or a good bait caster, you know, 7 foot, 2 inch medium to medium heavy rod. 20 to 30 pound braided fishing line, 20 pound more for the spinning reels, and I always go with 30 on the bait casters, and a 15 to 25 fluorocarbon leader material, depending on your braid line size. So that's kind of the equipment I use. Again, I'm a light tackle. I like the challenge. I like to be able to feel everything, and this equipment has just worked for me well. Again, my personal choice. Some people like to be heavier or even lighter. You can go lighter than that. So whatever you have confidence in. I always do, you know, I think Rick Clun said it, confidence, commitment, concentration. So as long as I got confidence, I'm good to go. Baits, you know, there's a world of baits out there, and everybody has their favorite baits. These just happen to be mine. You know, they all work. So the good old paddle tail, top left up there, that's gonna be a Z-Man bait. So a lot of the soft plastics I'll use are Z-Man. You got that Elastec technology, very versatile, very what am I looking for here? Tough baits. I mean, you can catch, you know, 100 fish on one of these baits, if not more. And they're naturally buoyant as well. So you can kind of just adjust the weight of your jig head or your weighted swim bait hook to what depth you want to cover in the water column with your bait. So that Z-Man paddler's up there. It's a great paddle tail bait. The artificial shrimp right there, of course, another great bait to kind of use this time of the year. Gold spoon, can't beat it. If I only had to pick one redfish bait to use this time of the year, it'd probably be a gold spoon. I could, you know, feed myself off that spoon. And the you know, the hard bait at the down bottom, that's going to be a jerk bait. You got floating options, you got, you know, sinking options, so you can definitely cover all the parts of the water column with different weighted jerk baits as well. Rattle traps, crankbaits, you name it. It'll, you know, it's going to be a great lure to target both trout and reds this time of the year. It's kind of changed day to day with the pre and post fronts around here with the hard baits. You know, surface to about 1 foot deep jerk bait was the key pre-front. Post front, they seem to be a little bit deeper. So we went to the heavier jerk bait that got down to about 6 foot if we needed it. So I kind of kept it around the 3 to 4 foot range, twitching a little bit faster, and that was the key. So it's good to really have all kind of options on the boat, and, you know, not just carry 1 or 2 out there. I've been there before and tried to make it work, but it's good to have all your options because things can change, and sometimes you got to change with them. And, you know, you got different hooks options down here, of course, for the soft plastics as well. You got the basic jig head, you got the weighted swim bait hook, you got the small spinner bait set up over there as well. And depending on what I'm fishing is, you know, what I'm going to rig the soft plastic with. If I'm fishing heavy cover oysters, I need to be more weedless or around some heavy grass. I'm definitely going to go for the weighted swim bait hook or the spinner bait. It's definitely going to keep my stuff a lot more weedless. And if I'm, you know, fishing open water or need to jig a little bit, definitely going to the old jig head. And again, I've mentioned this a couple times throughout this webinar, definitely covering different parts of the water column. Again, yesterday, you know, I was going by my pre-front conditions, what worked, and was using that more of a surface to about 1 foot jerk bait, and just weren't getting the bite. So we switched over to the heavier, you know, sinking twitch bait, and I mean, a world of a difference, you know, immediately started hooking up on fish. So, you know, just having different baits and being able to cover different parts of the water column, you know, can be the difference between a good day and a great day. And, you know, I usually carry about 3 setups on the boat, and usually that does me. And I got something different on each one to be able to cover different situations. And it definitely pays off being prepared, no doubt. All right, I think that covers it about all. I do appreciate you all for attending Targeting Redfish and Trout in the fall and early winter. I'm Captain Stephen Fields. Definitely tune in to more Navionics webinars upcoming.